In this chapter, we are diving into an important concept, public IP addresses and their role in connecting Azure resource to the internet. So let's get started. Now, what is a public IP address? So, public IP address, when you create a virtual machine in Azure, the wizard automatically assigns a public address to it as a resource. This public IP address enables inbound communication to your machine from the internet. For example, you can remote desktop, it means RDP, into your virtual machine from your laptop or desktop. If you have installed service like Internet Information Service, it means IIS, it allows you to access the web server hosted on the machine. In essence, the public IP address exposes your virtual machines to the internet, enabling it to communicate with external resources. Now, public IP addresses in Azure comes in two types of assignments. First one is static IP address and second one is dynamic IP address. So, let me explain this in detail. So, let's move to our Azure portal, and in our example, this virtual machine has a static IP address. So, let's open it. But what's the difference between static and dynamic IP addresses? Here is the key distinction. A static IP address remains the same even when the virtual machine is stopped and restarted from the Azure portal. A dynamic IP address, on the other hand, is subject to change. If you stop the virtual machine from the Azure portal and deallocate it, the dynamic IP address is released. When you restart the machine, Azure assigns a new dynamic IP address. For this example, our IP address is static. And for static IP address, the address stays consistent, ensuring reliability for services that needs to connect to the virtual machine. So, why use static IP addresses? Static IP addresses are crucial for applications that require a reliable connections. Here is why. When your machine is hosting an application or a service, client connect to using the IP address. If the IP address changes, as with a dynamic assignment, the client slows the connection because the target address no longer exists. With a static IP address, you ensure consistency, especially for production systems. Static IP addresses also help you to mapping domain's name to the IP address. For instance, user access a website using domain names like example.com, but behind the scenes, these are mapped to the static IP address for consistent routing. When to use static versus dynamic IP addresses? You might be wondering, why not always use static IPs? Well, it comes down to cost. Static IPs typically incur a small additional charge. Dynamical IPs are cost effective and ideal for test environments or temporary systems where reliability is not critical. For production environment, however, static IP addresses are often necessary to ensure reliability and consistency for end users. In real-life example in Azure, let's look at our example and navigate to the public IP address resource in Azure. Here you can see that the virtual machine has a static assignment. This means the IP address will remain the same. Even if we stop and restart the virtual machine from the Azure portal, static IPs have a small additional cost, but for mission critical application, this is worth it. Best practices for IP addressing. Now let's move to our diagram, and as you can see the chart of the public IP address and their charges based on your needs. To summarize, use dynamic IP addresses for testing and non-critical environments. Opt for static IP addresses for production systems or any application requiring a consistent connection. This ensures your balanced cost effectiveness with the reliability your application needs. And let's wrap up on public IP address in Azure. We have covered what public IP addresses are and how they work, the difference between static and dynamic IPs, when to choose each type of based on your needs. In the next chapter, we will explore more existing concepts to help you master Azure virtual machines.